Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. He bought a home for peace and freedom, no rules, no neighbors with clipboards. But when a power-hungry HOA tried to claim control over land they didn't own, one man fought back. Trespassers, fake cops, secret plots, this isn't just a feud, this is war in suburbia. I had always imagined that once I left the government job behind, life would finally slow down. That the stress would dissolve somewhere between the scent of barbecue smoke and the glint of late afternoon sun on pool water. I'd done my time, 19 years with Homeland Security, 10 of which were spent neck-deep in protocols, red tape, and people who thought rules were more important than common sense. When I started house hunting, I didn't want charm or prestige or any of that curb appeal nonsense. I wanted one thing: freedom. Real, uninterrupted, no HOA. Don't tell me what I can hang on my porch freedom. And I found it. A half-acre property just outside San Diego County, flanked on one side by an unassuming canyon and on the other by a high stucco wall that separated my land from a place called Marigold Heights, a meticulously polished neighborhood with its own gates, its own bylaws, and, as I would later learn, its own inflated sense of importance. But that wall was more than stucco and stone. It was supposed to be a promise. Their rules stayed on their side. My place had a long gravel driveway, a thick line of trees for privacy, and a backyard big enough to host a small army. The best part? A beautiful old-school in-ground pool, deep, wide, and shaded by palms that looked like they'd seen better wars than I had. The first week I moved in, I went full suburban bachelor mode, cleaned the pool, set up a few loungers, and fired up the grill. Life was quiet, peaceful, and mine, until the people with cameras showed up. It was maybe 7 in the evening. The ribs were nearly done. The speakers hummed with some good blues, and I was leaned back in a deck chair, sweating a little, watching the sunset make gold ripples on the water. That's when I saw them, 3 people standing on the sidewalk beyond my back fence. 2 women, 1 man, all dressed like they had just left a PTA meeting. Phones raised, lenses aimed right into my backyard. They didn't wave, didn't even look embarrassed. Just stood there, silently snapping shots like they were surveying a crime scene. I called out, "You folks sightseeing or looking for Zillow listings?" They said nothing. The man turned away. The taller woman lowered her phone but didn't leave. She gave me one of those tight, overly polite nods, like she wanted me to know she was judging me and enjoying it. I didn't think much of it until the next morning. There it was, an envelope in my mailbox stamped with a golden emblem that read, Marigold Heights Homeowners Association. Inside, a printed letter on glossy paper, way too formal for the nonsense it said. Dear homeowner, it has come to our attention that the current landscaping elements, including the placement and visibility of your backyard swimming pool, do not comply with the approved aesthetic standards of the Marigold Heights community. Please bring your exterior landscaping into alignment with Section 4B of the HOA Residential Design Guide by the end of this month. Failure to comply may result in further action. Sincerely, Marigold Heights HOA Board. I read it twice just to confirm I wasn't having a stroke. I laughed out loud, the kind of dry, disbelieving laugh that comes right before a string of curses. I walked straight into my office, opened my filing cabinet, and pulled out the documents. Title deed, parcel maps, jurisdiction survey, all signed, stamped, and very clear. My property was completely outside HOA boundaries. I had double-checked this exact issue when buying. I didn't sign a CC&R. I didn't sign a declaration. No shared services, no dues, no jurisdiction. Still, I decided to respond just in case they were confused. I drafted a letter, short, professional, and dripping in legal clarity. To whom it may concern, I am not, nor have I ever been, a member of the Marigold Heights Homeowners Association. My property is located outside your jurisdiction, as clearly indicated by County Assessor Parcel Map. The landscaping, including my pool, lies entirely within my private property and is governed solely by local zoning codes, with which I am fully compliant. Any further contact of this nature will be considered harassment. Regards, Evan Harper. I attached a scanned copy of the parcel map, had the whole thing notarized for good measure, and dropped it off at their front office myself. The woman at the desk, a young thing with perfect nails and dead eyes, barely glanced at it before stuffing it into a manila folder without a word. I expected some kind of acknowledgement, a phone call, an apology, a laugh, and an oops. Our bad. But there was nothing. That silence, That was the real warning sign, the kind that crawls up your spine and tells you you're not just dealing with a paperwork mistake. No, this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the opening move. They knew exactly what they were doing, and I had just let them know that I knew. It started like any other morning. Coffee, stretch, check the cameras, water the lemon tree. I had finally gotten the sprinklers on a timer, small victories. The San Diego sun was already warming up by the time I stepped out to skim the pool. A perfect, uneventful Tuesday, until I heard gravel crunching in the driveway. Not from a delivery truck or neighbor passing by. This was slow, purposeful. I glanced up, and there he was, walking down my driveway like he owned the place. He was wearing navy blue cargo pants, a button-up shirt with some generic badge stitched over the chest pocket, and a body cam strapped to his vest like he was ready to film an episode of Cops. Across his chest, Community Safety Officer, Marigold Heights, HOA. Oh, this was going to be good. I dropped the skimmer, stepped off the pool deck, and met him halfway across the yard. "You're trespassing," I said. Calm, direct, not my first rodeo. The guy didn't flinch. In fact, he squared his shoulders like he was the sheriff of some HOA Wild West. "You need to vacate the pool area immediately," he barked. "You're in violation of a community closure order." I blinked. "Excuse me, this property has been cited for non-compliance with Marigold Heights aesthetic and safety codes. As per HOA Regulation 41B, this area is off-limits until corrective action is completed." I almost laughed, but there was something too off about his delivery. Too rehearsed, like a mall cop who watched too many procedural dramas. "You're standing on private property," I said slowly. "This land is not part of Marigold Heights. You have no jurisdiction here, and I sure as hell didn't invite you." "I have the authority of the board," he replied without hesitation. "Refusing compliance may result in fines or legal action." "Oh, you're about to get legal action, all right," I muttered, pulling my phone from my back pocket. I called 911 on speaker right in front of him. I gave the dispatcher my name, address, and told them I had a man impersonating a law enforcement officer trespassing on private land. He stayed put, didn't budge, just stood there filming me like I was the problem. It took the sheriff's deputies less than 10 minutes to arrive. 2 cruisers pulled into my driveway. One of the deputies recognized me. He used to work border enforcement and knew a DHS face when he saw one. That helped a lot. "Sir," the deputy said to the uniformed wannabe cop, "can we see some ID?" He handed them a laminated card like he was showing off a library pass. The deputy looked it over, frowned, and turned to me. "Mr. Harper, this guy says he's with the HOA. He's not law enforcement. He came onto my land, refused to leave, and claimed I had to shut down my own pool." The other deputy joined in, radioed something in, then asked, "Are you part of Marigold Heights HOA?" "Not even close. My parcel isn't included in their CC&Rs. Never signed a thing. I've got the documents in the house." They followed me in while Officer HOA stood there like he was waiting for backup from Batman. I pulled out the file folder, deed boundary maps, signed and recorded copies of the lot split. The deputy looked over the paperwork carefully, then radioed again. Finally, they walked back outside. "Sir," the deputy said to the intruder, "you need to leave the property, now." The guy blinked, stiffened, and said, "I'm enforcing a safety directive. This is a community action." "This isn't your community," the deputy snapped, "and you've been told to leave. Next time you come back here without permission, it'll be criminal trespass, body cam or not." To his credit, the guy didn't run, but he didn't apologize either. Just turned, walked up the driveway like he'd won something, and got into a white Ford Escape with the HOA's gold crest stickered on the back window. The deputies gave me their cards, advised me to document everything, and said they'd file an incident report. After they left, I walked around my yard checking every camera. All of them had him. Clear footage, audio, everything. I backed up the files in 3 different places and emailed 1 copy straight to my lawyer, just in case. Then I sat on the pool steps, still barefoot, still fuming, and stared into the water. That wasn't enforcement. That was a warning shot. And I had a feeling it wouldn't be the last. The next morning, the air felt different, not in a mystical way. More like the way you sense a storm rolling in before you see the clouds. I walked out to the backyard with my coffee, half expecting peace, half expecting nonsense. Unfortunately, nonsense won by a landslide. My gate, my heavy wooden side gate that opened toward the pool, was sealed shut. At first glance, I thought maybe a branch had fallen during the night or something had jammed the hinges, but when I got closer, I saw the real problem. The entire lock seam had been packed solid with hardened spray foam, the kind contractors use to fill wall cavities. It bulged out between the boards like someone had tried to mummify the damn thing. On top of that, there were 2 shiny padlocks hanging off the latch, padlocks I had never bought. I stood there, staring at it for a moment, coffee in hand, barefoot in the dew, processing the fact that someone had walked onto my property in the middle of the night and literally glued my gate shut like they were sealing a crypt. Then I saw the flyer sticking out of my mailbox, a laminated sheet with the Marigold Heights HOA emblem printed across the top, bold red text underneath. Due to community safety concerns, the pool area is closed. Access is restricted until further notice, by order of Marigold Heights HOA Board. I let out a laugh, not the amused kind, more the I need to start budgeting for bail money kind. I marched straight back inside, pulled up the camera feed, and scrubbed through the night. It didn't take long. 1 o'clock in the morning, a familiar figure in the same navy cargo pants hopped my fence like he'd done it 1,000 times. Behind him were 2 others, masked, wearing reflective vests, carrying armfuls of equipment. On the footage, they moved with the coordination of people who'd done this before. One of them slapped fake "pool maintenance in progress" signs on the fence. Another reapplied the foam with a level of enthusiasm that suggested deep emotional problems. The officer strutted around like a foreman, shining his flashlight on everything, sometimes straight into the camera. Maybe intentionally, maybe because he was an idiot. Hard to tell. When they finally left, through the same route they came in, my hands were already clenched so tight my nails were digging into my palms. I called the sheriff's department again. They knew my voice by now. I explained that someone had vandalized my gate overnight. The operator sighed, in that way people sigh when they're thinking, "Oh God, the HOA lunatics again." She said she'd send a deputy out. While waiting, I walked the perimeter, checking for anything else they'd messed with. Nothing obvious, just the gate, the locks, the signs, and the fact that someone thought they could literally shut down my property, like they were the city of San Diego conducting a health inspection. 15 minutes later, the same deputy from yesterday arrived, Officer Matthews. Tall guy, late 30s, good sense of humor buried under permanent fatigue. He walked up to the gate, nudged the foam with a gloved finger, and breathed out slowly. "Well," he said, "I guess they upgraded from knocking." "This is vandalism," I said, "and criminal trespass, and harassment, and possibly a Disney villain origin story." He smirked, then straightened up. "You have footage?" "Clear as high-def sin." Inside the house, I showed him the video. He watched the whole thing twice. No commentary, just shaking his head a little more with every second. "You know the board is going to claim this was some kind of independent volunteer action, right?" he finally said. "Last I checked, volunteer doesn't mean break into private property and do arts and crafts with spray foam." He snorted. "I'll write it up. Again. And I'd recommend filing a formal restraining order. These people clearly don't understand boundaries." "I'm already talking to a lawyer. Believe me, this won't just disappear." He nodded. "Good. Because they're escalating." I knew he was right. Deep down, I'd felt it since the moment that man in the fake uniform walked into my yard. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't miscommunication. This was pressure, organized, deliberate, and aimed right at me. After Matthews left, I sat down at my desk and typed up another incident report for my attorney, attaching the footage and the photos. She called me within minutes. "This is bad," she said. "Really bad. They're trying to build a narrative that your property is somehow under their jurisdiction." "They can try," I replied. "They'll lose. Not if they wear you down first. We're filing a harassment complaint and a request for a temporary restraining order today. They cross this line again, we escalate." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the paused camera feed on my monitor, the man in the fake uniform mid-stride, smug, confident, sure of his authority. "They'll cross it," I said. "People like this always do." And with the smell of dried spray foam still sharp in the morning air, I realized something heavy and inevitable. I was officially at war. A week after the gate sabotage, I wasn't sleeping much. Not out of fear, more like a constant simmering awareness that someone was watching, waiting for the next chance to mess with me. And not just someone. These people had structure, uniforms, logos, flyers. Bureaucratic confidence backed by absolutely no legal standing. That's what made it worse. My lawyer, Jenna, fast-tracked the temporary restraining order and helped file a civil harassment petition. We gathered all the footage, photos, statements, and I had enough documentation to bury a medium-sized cult. But Jenna wanted more. They're going to deny, minimize, and deflect, she said. We need something they can't talk their way around. So we installed new cameras, high-res, motion-triggered, with night vision and silent push alerts to my phone. One went above the pool, one behind the gate, another in the alleyway behind the property line, and a final one under the eaves near the tool shed. Nothing hidden, just strategically quiet. 3 days later, they delivered. It was 2:47 a.m. when my phone buzzed. I was already awake, sitting on the couch with a bourbon in hand, watching an old war documentary. The alert popped up. Backyard north fence. Motion detected. I tapped into the live feed and stared. There he was again, the fake officer, this time not in uniform, just a t-shirt, shorts, and flip-flops, walking casually along the back fence. And he wasn't alone. He carried a towel over one shoulder. A pair of swim goggles dangled from his fingers. You've got to be kidding me, I thought. I opened another feed. There, clear as daylight, under the IR lens, he scaled the low brick wall and dropped quietly into my yard. Like he'd done this before. Like it was just a casual midnight dip at the neighborhood clubhouse pool. He moved with confidence, cutting across the grass, walking directly toward the deep end. I watched, stunned, as he peeled off his shirt and stepped to the edge of the pool like a man on vacation. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my shotgun from the locked case near the door, unloaded legal and entirely symbolic, and stepped out through the kitchen side door. As I rounded the corner, the motion lights triggered. He was halfway in, already waist deep, water sloshing up against his hips. "Don't move," I barked. "Step out of the pool, now." He froze. Slowly, he raised his hands, dripping, pale under the halogens. "This isn't what it looks like," he stammered. "Oh, it definitely is," I said. "And you're going to sit your ass on that patio until the cops get here." He opened his mouth like he was going to argue. Thought better of it. Walked out of the pool, shivering, and sat down on one of my loungers. Water dripped onto the cushions. He looked pathetic. No badge, no posture, no fake authority to cling to. When the sheriff's cruiser pulled up 20 minutes later, I met them at the gate, waved them through, and let the scene speak for itself. The deputy, young guy this time, maybe late 20s, looked from me to the wet trespasser and raised an eyebrow. "Can I assume this isn't a social call?" he asked. "He broke into my yard to go for a swim," I said flatly. "No permission, no invitation, and this isn't the first time." The guy tried to talk. "It's not like that. My mom said." "Who's your mom?" the deputy asked. He hesitated. "Karen Langstrom," I said for him. The deputy's posture shifted. Recognition. He turned back to the trespasser. "You're her son." "Yeah." "You got any ID?" Soaking wet and humiliated, the guy dug a soggy wallet out of a gym bag he'd tossed behind the lounger. The deputy took it, confirmed his name, and nodded. "Well, Brad, we've got a problem." The whole thing took about an hour. I handed over the footage, gave a written statement, and the deputy put Brad in cuffs. Not dramatic, not rough, just efficient. When they walked him to the car, I noticed something in Brad's face. Not panic, not regret, just confusion, like he still didn't understand what the big deal was. As if breaking into someone's yard to use their pool was only a problem if you got caught. The next morning, Jenna called. "I spoke with the deputy," she said. "They ran his info. Brad Langstrom is not a licensed security officer, not registered with any state agency. He's not even bonded. So that community safety officer badge, fabricated. HOA doesn't have legal enforcement powers. He was acting under a made-up title." I waited. "And he's her son," she added, "which means Karen authorized her unlicensed child to perform armed-style patrols on property outside her jurisdiction. That's a scandal in the making." I sat back, exhaled. "We have everything we need," she said. "You're not just dealing with petty harassment anymore. You're dealing with fraud, possibly conspiracy. And Karen Langstrom just handed it to us on a silver chlorinated platter." By the following morning, the footage was already backed up to 3 cloud drives, burned onto 2 USB sticks, and sitting on Jenna's desk. But I wasn't done. This time, I wanted more than restraining orders. I wanted noise. San Diego has a few local stations that love dramatic homeowner stories, HOA tyranny, neighbor disputes, zoning corruption, clickbait gold. I sent one of the USBs, along with a brief but juicy summary, to KNSD. Less than 2 hours later, my phone rang. "Mr. Harper, this is Lucy Green with Channel 7 News. Do you have time for a short interview?" I didn't even hesitate. I've got all the time in the world. They came by that afternoon, Lucy and a camera guy in jeans and a Dateline-level windbreaker. We sat by the pool, framed carefully to show both the loungers and the security cameras in the background. I told her everything, from the first letter to the midnight dip. I showed her the restraining order paperwork, the fake badges, even a still frame of Brad mid-cannonball. She asked if I thought HOA leadership had ordered the trespass. They either ordered it or raised a son so entitled he thought he was the law, I said. And frankly, I'm not sure which is worse. The piece aired that night. Exclusive. Man claims HOA sent fake officer to enforce non-existent rules on private property. It opened with the footage of Brad in the pool, slowed down just enough to make it look like some kind of criminal Olympic dive. Then the narration kicked in. Evan Harper thought he bought peace and privacy. What he got instead was the HOA from hell. Within 24 hours, the story was everywhere. Reddit picked it up, our public freakout and our hoe failure were having a field day. Someone made a TikTok edit with dramatic music and a voiceover, when your HOA thinks they're the FBI. My favorite version used the Curb Your Enthusiasm theme when Brad gets cuffed, but the real shift came 2 days later. Jenna called me, half laughing, half panicked. "You've started a movement." "What?" Emails, dozens, maybe hundreds. People from other neighborhoods near Marigold Heights, complaints, statements. Some of them were intimidated by Karen's board too. One woman said the HOA tried to bill her twice for landscaping she never ordered, and her house isn't even in the subdivision. The news coverage had pried open the floodgates. People who'd been too afraid to speak up were coming out of the woodwork. HOA horror stories poured in, unauthorized liens, fraudulent citations, fines for non-harmonious holiday decor. Jenna flagged a few emails worth digging into. One stood out, a retired couple, Margaret and Frank Lawson, who said they were bullied into selling their home 5 years ago after HOA reps claimed their property violated an invisible boundary realignment. They'd signed under threat of legal takeover. I asked Jenna, "Is that even a real thing?" "No," she said. "It's not a thing. It's criminal coercion dressed up like city planning." We met the Lawsons the next day at a cafe just outside Marigold Heights. Sweet couple. Frank had a Vietnam vet hat, and Margaret brought a full binder of documents. HOA letters, maps, a fake notice of jurisdiction adjustment signed by, you guessed it, Karen Langstrom. Jenna's jaw visibly clenched. "These aren't just scare tactics," she muttered. "They're trying to fabricate legal authority and expand HOA control into independent properties. That's not just unethical. That's a potential RICO violation." The word hit me like a shot of adrenaline. RICO. Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. It's federal, usually used for gangs and mob fronts. But if Karen's been systematically forging authority and using her position to harass and seize property, well, it qualifies. Jenna immediately started coordinating with the county DA's office. She sent over all our documentation, videos, letters, the Lawsons' files, everything. And the DA didn't brush us off. Quite the opposite. The next morning, Channel 7 aired a follow-up. This time, the headline wasn't just about me. HOA tyranny. Homeowners speak out after shocking footage goes viral. They even dug up an old campaign flyer from Karen's initial HOA board election. She'd run on a platform of community integrity and expansion. Expansion? Funny how that word hits different when you know it involved spray foam sabotage and swim breaks on private property. Later that week, I got a formal call from the San Diego County District Attorney's Office. They were launching an official criminal investigation into Marigold Heights HOA, with Karen named as a person of interest in multiple counts of abuse of power, document fraud, and criminal trespass. I didn't smile, not really. But I felt something click into place. A turn, the kind of shift you only get after months of being pushed, threatened, gaslit, and finally realizing you're not the crazy one. They are, and they're going down. By the weekend, national outlets picked it up. Newsweek, Vice, even Fox and MSNBC took swings at it. HOA sends fake cop to shut down private pool, gets sued into oblivion. HOA horror story sparks statewide review of association oversight laws. Somewhere between my bourbon shelf and the absurdity of a man in flip-flops claiming jurisdiction over my pool, I had accidentally become the face of anti-HOA resistance. And I wasn't about to back down now. 2 weeks later, I walked into the county courthouse wearing the one suit I kept from my DHS days. Dark charcoal, still crisp, still fitting like a tailored threat. Jenna walked beside me, tablet in hand, calm as a bomb tech. This wasn't the trial, not yet. This was the beginning of the beginning. A preliminary hearing where we'd argue for a full civil case against Marigold Heights HOA and request injunctive relief to bar them from any future interaction with me or my property. The building buzzed with press. A few journalists recognized me. One cameraman tried to get a shot of me walking in, like I was a C-list celebrity. I didn't care. Let them watch. Inside the courtroom, it wasn't just us and the HOA board's lawyer. No. Karen Langstrom herself was present, sitting in the front row, arms crossed, power blazer zipped all the way up like she was dressing for battle. She didn't look at me, but her mouth was tight, like someone had made her chew broken glass. Their attorney, some overconfident corporate type named Todd Rasmussen, looked like he expected this to be wrapped up in 20 minutes. He opened with a request to dismiss. The HOA was acting within a reasonable belief of jurisdiction. Mr. Harper's property visually appears to be part of Marigold Heights and has access routes that pass through our shared easement. The actions taken by our client's safety volunteer, while regrettable, were never sanctioned officially. No board-approved order authorized entry. I could see Karen's jaw twitch when he said volunteer. Jenna stood, calm, precise. Your Honor, we will present footage showing this volunteer wearing a uniform with an official-looking badge, entering my client's land multiple times, issuing verbal orders, physically vandalizing property, and finally being detained while swimming in Mr. Harper's pool without consent. We will also present HOA flyers with explicit warnings issued under the board's logo, citing fictitious pool closure orders. Furthermore, we have evidence, maps, deeds, title reports, proving beyond doubt that Mr. Harper's land is not and never has been within the HOA's jurisdiction. She let that breathe for a second, then added, additionally, we will introduce testimony and documentation from other former homeowners who allege similar harassment and fraudulent boundary claims by this HOA, suggesting a pattern of behavior, not an isolated incident. The judge, a heavy-set man with a skeptical face and no visible patience for theatrics, turned to Rasmussen. Mr. Rasmussen, does your client deny issuing these flyers or instructing her son to enforce any HOA codes? There was a long pause. Rasmussen shifted. The board does not officially sanction unlicensed enforcement. Any flyers may have been distributed independently by overzealous volunteers misunderstanding internal directives. And the badge. No knowledge of the source, Your Honor. At that moment, Jenna stood again. Permission to submit Exhibit A, a copy of the badge, its photo, and a vendor receipt, paid for using the HOA's operating budget, labeled as security patrol materials. The silence hit like a drumbeat. The judge looked at Karen for the first time. Mrs. Langstrom, are you the acting president of Marigold Heights HOA? She nodded curtly. Did you approve this expense? I authorized the badge, she said slowly, each word like she was choosing whether to lie. But it was for visibility, not enforcement, just community awareness. Jenna leaned in. Visibility doesn't require trespassing into private yards at 2 in the morning. Mr. Harper's lot appears... It appears nothing, I interrupted. You knew I wasn't part of your jurisdiction. I told you. I sent maps. You ignored them. The judge raised a hand to quiet me, but didn't scold. In fact, he looked mildly satisfied, like he'd been waiting for someone to cut through the spin. By the end of the hearing, he granted our request for a preliminary injunction, a court order barring the HOA or its members from entering, contacting, or otherwise interacting with me or my property pending the outcome of the civil trial. It was a win, a solid formal slap to the face of HOA overreach, but it wasn't the real prize. That was still coming. Over the next 2 weeks, we prepped for full litigation. Jenna brought in a forensic document analyst. He examined several internal HOA documents obtained through discovery, including 2 that claim my property was pending annexation into Marigold Heights jurisdiction. Both were signed digitally by the previous property owner, except the signature was a forgery. Bad one, too. The man was dead. That took this beyond civil law. We brought in Frank and Margaret Lawson as witnesses, as well as 2 other former homeowners with similar stories. All of them had been targeted with scare tactics. HOA board members had claimed authority to fine them, seize landscaping, even demand access for compliance inspections. Worse still, we found an internal HOA email chain discussing how to handle rogue parcels. One line from Karen stood out: "We here at the East need to be firm. These independents disrupt continuity and will damage property values if left unchecked." Continuity. That was the word she kept falling back on. Like conformity had legal weight. Meanwhile, the DA's office was moving fast. Too fast for Karen, apparently. Jenna received word that Karen had attempted to meet privately with the assistant DA to argue her actions were well-intentioned and in line with community protection goals. The ADA declined the meeting and the very next day added criminal charges to the case: falsification of legal documents, impersonation of authority, and conspiracy to intimidate through fraudulent enforcement. Karen's world began to crack. Local news stations ran new headlines daily. HOA president accused of criminal conspiracy. Fake enforcement leads to real charges. San Diego homeowner sues HOA for $250,000 after pool intrusion. Jenna filed an amended complaint seeking $150,000 in damages, citing emotional distress, property damage, legal costs, and loss of quiet enjoyment, an actual legal term and a poetic one at that. We were winning, but not because we were loud. We were winning because they had gotten so used to pushing people around, they forgot what it looked like when someone actually pushed back. And I pushed back hard. The courthouse was packed. By the time I walked through the doors that morning, there were already half a dozen cameras out front. Journalists clumped around the stairs like crows on a fence. One of them called out my name as I passed. I didn't stop. I wasn't here for sound bites. Inside, the air had that dry, tense weight you only feel before something irreversible happens. I took my seat next to Jenna, nodded once at the bailiff, and waited. Karen was already there at the defense table, dressed in muted gray this time. No power red, no sharp-shouldered jacket. Her face was pale, thinner than before, like the months had carved out the real version of her beneath the curated surface. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Then we began. This wasn't some long, winding trial with dramatic objections and last-minute twists. It was tight, factual, and devastatingly clear. Jenna laid it all out like a forensic blueprint. The original false letter claiming HOA authority over my property, the fabricated closure orders, the unauthorized community safety officer badge funded by HOA dues, the vandalism, the trespassing, the 2 a.m. swim, the surveillance footage. Every piece clicked into place like rounds in a magazine. Then came the kicker, testimony from the Lawsons and 2 other victims, each detailing how the HOA, under Karen's leadership, had attempted to intimidate or mislead them into compliance using made-up rules, fake citations, and even threats of legal action. One man, David Lynn, a former software engineer, testified how he paid nearly $10,000 in fines over a violation tied to a parcel the HOA didn't even legally control. But the moment the courtroom truly shifted was when Jenna introduced Exhibit 19, an internal email thread from Karen to the rest of the HOA board, sent months before my first letter. The subject line read, "Strategies for enforcing uniformity on peripheral lots." In the body of the email, Karen had written, "We can't afford to let these rogue properties devalue the neighborhood. If they refuse voluntary compliance, we'll create pressure points. Inspections, safety citations, visible interventions. Keep it soft at first. Escalate quietly." You could hear the oxygen leave the room. The judge asked for clarification. "Ms. Langstrom, did you authorize this message?" Karen didn't speak at first. Her attorney whispered something. She nodded stiffly. "Yes," she said, "but it wasn't intended as harassment. It was strategic outreach. These properties used the same visual corridor. We had a duty to maintain uniform." The judge held up a hand. "That's enough." He looked tired, not angry, just done. Then Jenna called her final witness, Deputy Matthews, the officer who had responded to the late-night pool intrusion. Calm, professional, he confirmed the trespass, the arrest, and the complete lack of any legal authority presented by Brad Langstrom. He also confirmed that Brad had introduced himself on body cam as a community enforcement officer, which does not exist under California law. Jenna rested her case. It took only 15 minutes for the defense to try their limp rebuttal, claiming overreach, misunderstanding, community pressure. It didn't land. Everyone in the room had seen the footage. Everyone had heard the email. The illusion had shattered. The judge didn't even ask the jury to deliberate. Civil court allows for bench rulings, and he made his within the hour. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Mr. Evan Harper. The Marigold Heights Homeowners Association is found liable for harassment, property damage, civil trespass, and willful misrepresentation of legal authority. Additionally, due to the evidence presented, the court recommends that the district attorney's office proceed with criminal prosecution against Karen Langstrom for document falsification, conspiracy, and impersonation-related offenses. The HOA is ordered to pay damages to Mr. Harper in the amount of $150,000 and is barred from any further contact or attempted jurisdiction over his property in perpetuity. He paused, then added, "Furthermore, this court orders an independent audit of the Marigold Heights HOA, its financial practices, and all enforcement actions taken over the past 5 years." The gavel came down. Behind me, someone let out a low whistle. A reporter. I didn't turn around. Karen didn't stand. She just sat there, blinking slowly, like she couldn't quite process the fact that the world had stopped bending to her rules. Her son wasn't present. Neither were the other board members. Just her. Alone. As Jenna and I stepped outside, the press descended. Microphones, questions, flashes. Jenna gave a brief statement. I didn't say much, just this. You don't get to fabricate power and then act shocked when people call your bluff. That quote ended up on the front page of the San Diego Tribune the next morning. Later that week, the criminal charges were formally filed. Karen was arrested, quietly, with no perp walk, but it still made headlines. Fraud, conspiracy, impersonation of an official, falsification of documents. Her bail was posted, but the damage was done. Meanwhile, the HOA board fractured. 2 members resigned. The treasurer went dark. Homeowners in Marigold Heights started petitioning for dissolution of the entire HOA, citing systemic abuse and financial mismanagement. Turns out, once the illusion of authority cracks, people stop being afraid. As for me, I took a day off. No court, no lawyers, no cameras, just me, the pool, and a cold drink. The new security system hummed quietly in the background. I leaned back, watching the sky turn that soft gold it gets right before sundown, and for the first time in months, I exhaled without tension. The war was ending, and I had won. It's been 3 months since the court ruling. The settlement cleared in full, $150,000 deposited straight into my account. Blood money, maybe, but I earned every damn cent. Jenna told me I could sue for more if I wanted to. Emotional distress, punitive damages. But I didn't. Not because I'm noble, because I didn't need it. What I needed was peace. Marigold Heights HOA, as it turns out, didn't survive the audit. The court-appointed forensic team ripped through their records like a brush fire. Fake citations, unauthorized expenses, fraudulent maintenance projects, billed to homeowners who never approved them. Over 20 properties had been subject to some form of HOA overreach. 5 of them never legally fell under the HOA's jurisdiction to begin with. Mine was just the one that went nuclear. The California Department of Real Estate stepped in. Fines were levied. The board was disbanded. Marigold Heights Homeowners Association was formally dissolved under court order for operating beyond its charter and engaging in fraudulent governance. The neighborhood now operates under a voluntary civic committee. No dues, no forced compliance, no Karen. I heard one of the former board members started a community garden and has never felt freer. Good for them. As for Karen Langstrom, she took a plea deal. No trial, no cameras in the courtroom, just a quiet agreement. 4 years in state prison with eligibility for parole after 2. She lost her position, her reputation, and her son hasn't been seen in public since the day of her arrest. He avoided charges technically, but was barred from participating in any civic organization for the next 10 years. I don't think he's planning any neighborhood patrols anytime soon. There were articles, op-eds, HOA reform advocates started citing my case as a reason to re-examine enforcement laws in California. One state senator even referenced the Harper incident in a committee session about HOA overreach. I laughed when I saw the clip. I never wanted to be anyone's example. I just wanted them to leave me the hell alone. The fence has been rebuilt. This time, steel core, 8 feet tall, tamper-resistant locks, reinforced gate, motion lights, high-res PTZ cameras, real-time alerts. I even installed a redundant cellular backup in case someone ever tries to cut the power. Overkill? Maybe. Or maybe not. On the gate, I mounted a custom-made steel plaque. It cost a fortune, but it was worth every penny. Bold letters, etched deep and permanent. Private property, no AIO. Trespassing, jail time. Tourists stop to take pictures sometimes. Locals laugh, take selfies. I don't mind. It's not just a sign. It's a line in the sand. One that doesn't move. I still live here. Same house. Same lemon tree. Same pool, though now with updated motion sensors and a deadbolt lock on the equipment shed. The loungers are new, upgraded after the trial, and there's a custom-built outdoor grill I finally treated myself to. Sometimes I stand over it flipping steaks and think, this could have been just a quiet life. But then I remember, quiet was never an option. Not when people like Karen exist. Not when an entire system can be hijacked by power-hungry suburban tyrants hiding behind bylaws and fences and fake badges. I wasn't their first target. I was just the first one who hit back hard enough to make them bleed. Sometimes I get letters, emails from people in Arizona, Texas, Florida, stories just like mine. How did you fight them? Can I use your court filings? Is there a copy of your restraining order I can show my lawyer? I always respond. I always send the docs. I tell them the same thing. They win when you think you're alone. You're not. Stand your ground, back it up, and never let them tell you what's yours. A few weeks ago, a woman in Nevada told me she printed that out and taped it to her mailbox. I smiled. This morning I made coffee, fed the cat, checked the perimeter, no alerts. The sky was clear and the water was still. I sat at the edge of the pool, toes in the water, and listened to the breeze move through the lemon tree. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next attack. I felt like a man who'd reclaimed his land, not just with paperwork or payouts, but with truth, law, and absolute relentless defiance. They came for my peace. Now they get to choke on the silence.